G'day champions, let's talk about the Sigma 28-45 T2 Autofocus Cine Lens. Today I'll be having a chat about what I've been shooting with this lens in the real world and also show you in-depth controlled tests on the Venice 2 8K. I won't be shooting lens charts, I'll be showing you the things that I actually think matter when it comes to looking at lenses. This lens, of course, is the spiritual successor to the Super 35 Sigma 18-35, which was an absolute workhorse for many shooters. This is a hybrid cine lens which already exists as a popular stills lens, but this is the first Cine AF lens Sigma has ever created. It does not come in the classic PL mount of most Cine lenses, instead it's available in both E and L mount. The build quality is exceptional as to be expected from Sigma, the gears feel nice and sturdy, overall it feels like a total workhorse. I've been shooting with the 28-45 Cine lens for the past month, getting to know it better across multiple camera systems. I'll be showing you footage from mainly the Venice 2 8K today and a few shots from the FX2. Recently, I used it as a single lens approach to a documentary I've been filming on a mate of mine, Colby Thickness, who is an up-and-coming fighter in the UFC. My focus puller and camera assistant, Christian, has been super impressed with this lens. The performance of it with a remote follow focus has been exceptional. The range and small size of this lens has meant that we can shoot with a lean team and move quickly between a variety of different shot sizes and scenarios using Ronin 2, handheld, tripod, and not have to change lens once. For this doc, I've had it on the Sony Venice 2 8K and been really happy with its performance and range. I've been shooting between 8.6K full frame open gate for the majority of shooting and 5.8K Super 35 for when I wanted a tighter frame or higher frame rates. This has essentially given me a 28 to 70 focal range from the one lens, all at T2. Pairing this lens with a 1/8 Schneider Hollywood black mist filter has really made it sing, allowing highlights to subtly bloom and giving a more cinematic image. I've found the lens to be sharp without off-putting, with no noticeable chromatic aberration. It has beautiful soft bokeh and a really nice look. Colors are similar to all modern Sigma lenses. They're neutral and well balanced in camera, but able to be pushed to extremes in a grade without becoming muddy. Hands down, my favorite feature of this lens is the amazing close focus of 30 centimeters or 11.8 inches across all focal lengths. It's super impressive. Its close focus actually rivals most prime lenses. Aperture goes from T2 all the way to T16 and can be controlled manually via the iris ring on the lens or set to be controlled via the camera. There's a nice little locking mechanism that prevents accidentally changing between those iris modes. Focus can be manual or, of course, autofocus on cameras that allow autofocus, not the Venice. A nice feature is when you go from autofocus back to manual, the focus of the lens goes to wherever your manual ring is set, which means a focus puller will not have to reset their focus system if you're jumping back and forth between auto and manual focus. That is great news. Let's talk about the pros of using an E mount instead of using a PL mount for this lens. Apart from autofocus, the overall reduced weight of a camera and lens package that doesn't have a PL mount is a big difference. There is transmission via lens data, which shows focus, zoom, and iris positions on the camera, but iris on camera for this lens is shown as f-stops, the same as a photography lens, whereas this lens in particular is meant to be a cine lens and it's shown as t-stops on the lens. I'm sure this could be fixed with a firmware update. Well, that's another great thing about E-mount is you can do firmware updates on this lens via E-mount cameras. There are some cons of the E-mount system, especially using a cine lens on E-mount. E-mount is not shimmable, so you cannot adjust back focus or any other focus situations. Locking E-mount is tough, non-locking E-mount is not tough. There is a fair bit of movement without a locking E-mount, so on smaller cameras without locking E-mount, you may want to use a lens support. Full transparency, I have been given this lens by C.R.Kennedy, the distributor of Sigma in Australia, for this test and review. I'm also a really big fan of Sigma and I own many other Sigma Cine and stills lenses. With all that out of the way, let's jump into some tests. This test footage was created at Lemac Australia's test bay in Sydney. Thank you to Dimitri and Dennis for putting aside the time to help me with this lens test and also giving me the Sony Venice 2 8K for all these shots that you see within this video. Test footage was shot on the Sony Venice 2 8K in open gate 8.6K unless it's otherwise stated, in XOCN ST codec, S-Log3, .cine color space was used, Sony's LC709 Type A LUT was added in post, exposure was set at 800 EI, I just changed ND filters if I needed to, color temp was 5500 Kelvin, and the white balance was slightly adjusted in post just to make the white white. This lens features a small zoom range of 28 to 45mm. As with Sigma's original 18 to 35, it would be rare to use such a small range as an actual zoom lens. It's better to look at this lens as a set of variable prime lenses, allowing you to have multiple focal lengths in the one lens, but I will talk about that more later. I quite like this zoom range as I'm used to the Sigma 18 to 35, which is basically the same zoom range for Super 35mm. I treat that lens as variable primes as well. I'm hoping that Sigma release a longer T2 autofocus cine zoom to complement this lens, and hopefully it has a focal range overlap. Something like a 45mm to 85mm T2 would be ideal, and it would really allow for great coverage on what would essentially be a two lens set that covers most prime lenses. For the bokeh test, bokeh, whatever you want to call it, write in, tell me if I'm saying it wrong. We tested bokeh through the focus range at 28, 35, and 45mm. Across the zoom, bokeh is really nice and smooth, and very impressive for such a fast zoom. There is very light onion ring effect that you won't really notice unless you pixel peep. There's also a cat's eye effect, edge of frame on all focal lengths, which can be quite flattering when framing faces. This effect cleans up to a spherical as you close down the iris on all focal lengths again. So let's have a look at each of the focal lengths. At 28mm wide open in close focus, bokeh is chopped towards the edge of frame. Just a reminder, close focus on this lens is 30 centimeters or 11.8 inches. It's rare that you'll be shooting this close with heaps of bokeh in the background, but with that in mind, remember, the chop is not as noticeable when focusing further than 4 foot from the image plane. The choppiness does become spherical at around T8. Overall, really nice. But what about at 35? Wide open in close focus, the bokeh still shows a small amount of chopped edges which clean up as you focus further away or close down the iris slightly. It's starting to swirl a bit, which is looking really cool. The bokeh does start to show iris blades as you begin to stop down, but I didn't really find it distracting at all. I think what the bokeh is doing here is really, really beautiful. At 45mm wide open in close focus, the bokeh no longer shows chopped edges. The cat's eye effect is still present on the edges, which is great. The bokeh looks awesome, and it has that swirliness to it a lot more now than at 35. It's great for framing faces, and it really gives it a bit of character. Due to it being a longer focal length, when you start to close down at 45mm, the iris blades are slightly more noticeable than they were at 35mm, but once again, I don't really find it to be distracting or in any way a deal breaker when the rest of the bokeh looks this amazing. It's just something to be aware of. Everyone's favorite, the flare test. We tested this flare at 28, 35, and 45mm wide open at T2. Flares are present, but they remain soft and not distracting. They show nice colors of blue, purple, and orange, with green flares often seen in modern lenses. Overall, I really like the way this lens flares. I don't think it's going to be any different from how this stills version of this lens flares. Veiling glare is present, but I believe that's probably just from the torch that we've used. When I use the lens outside in natural light, I didn't really notice much veiling glare. It's not overwhelming, it's probably not a big deal. Flaring is of course subjective, so have a look for yourself and make your own mind up. To show close focus, we set the lens to its minimum focus point at 28, 35, and 45, and Dennis brought his eye in and out of focus to show the effect of the close focus. The close focus on this zoom is absolutely exceptional. It maintains 30 centimeters or 11.8 inch from the focal plane across every single focal length of this lens. This competes so fiercely with the close focus abilities of many full-frame prime lenses, and it's definitely, hands down, my favorite feature of this lens. It's almost unbelievable that a zoom lens with a stop of T2 and a sharpness of this ability within a compact size is able to focus this close. It is absolutely amazing. For the focus breathing test, we tested focus breathing at 28, 35, and 45 mil, all wide open. Breathing is present, but it's surprisingly subdued. I expected a lot more focus breathing from a fast full-frame zoom lens. Of course, in a lens test scenario, you will notice it, but in the real world, you probably won't notice this focus breathing that much. When I was shooting the doco with this lens, I didn't notice focus breathing at all, but I wasn't really focused on it either. Pardon the pun. We tested this lens's parfocal abilities at close and fast subjects at 28, 35, and 45 mil wide open. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be parfocal, but it is surprisingly close, almost painfully close. The fact that you can't shim this lens due to it being E-mount means you can't adjust the parfocal abilities either. If you're using autofocus, parfocal abilities are not going to really be a problem, as the AF will just lock on and adjust anyway to whatever you set the zoom to. In the real world, without autofocus, the chances of you zooming in and out during a shot on a lens with this small of a focal range is pretty rare, so I don't really see parfocal being an issue in the real world. As an example of just how small the parfocal inability is, have a look at this shot of Dennis's eye here. As we zoom in and out, you can see the focal plane just slightly changes from the inside of his eye to the outside of his eye. Now, whether that matters or not to you is really up to you. As this lens is a hybrid lens, I was really interested to see if there was any lag on focus, zoom, or iris. Focus seemed perfect and showed no lag, which was a huge relief. Great work to Sigma's engineers on nailing this. I am sure this is not an easy thing to do in a lens that requires both autofocus and manual focus hard stops. It feels like this must be mechanically linked in some way. Zoom is definitely mechanically linked. There is absolutely no lag there at all. Really great results from that. Feels super strong. Iris, however, is a different story. If you're moving the iris really fast, like I am in this video, the iris is very slow to actually catch up. The chances of you moving it this fast are probably pretty low, but never say never. You just have to know there is a delay. Obviously, the movement of the iris is being controlled electronically by the camera, so this could change depending on what camera system you're using. But it's definitely not mechanically linked between the ring and the actual iris movement, so it's just something to keep in mind. Hopefully, with a firmware update, this could be sorted to be quicker or more directly linked. Autofocus on this lens is great, and that's to be expected from Sigma. They are really good at autofocus lenses. I shot these examples using the Sony FX2, which has Sony's latest AI autofocus capabilities. Performance is rock solid. I'm not really going to test autofocus any more than that. I think the stills version of this lens would have the exact same autofocus capabilities. So if you want to know more about the autofocus capabilities, I would definitely recommend looking up a stills version of the lens, a review video on that. There is barrel distortion present on this lens at 28mm, which turns into pincushion distortion at 45mm. I was surprised that it wasn't worse considering this lens's range, size, and t-stop. With lens compensation turned on in camera, this distortion is no longer a problem. The great thing about this lens being E-mount is that the lens data is also being recorded. So, if you hate the distortion, you can choose to fix it with lens compensation turned in on cameras up to and including the Burano, FX3s, FX6s, Burano, they're all going to have it built in. But if you're using the higher end Venice, you can actually do a lens compensation in post-production as all the lens data is being recorded into the metadata. Thank you so much, E-mount. Let's talk about focal range. Yes, 28 to 45mm is a tight focal range. However, if you shoot FX2 or Burano, you can set a user button on the camera to punch in from full frame into a Super 35 recording mode. Now, how does that work? Well, since the FX2 sensor is downsampling a roughly 7K sensor into 4K video, you are able to sample it as a full frame or a Super 35 frame, both outputting a 4K resolution. You cannot make this change while you are recording, so you have to record and then stop and then make the change and then record again. With the Burano, on the other hand, if you choose to shoot at a 6K project rate, you can subsample the 8.6K sensor to either shoot full frame downsampled to 6K, or you can shoot Super 35 sampled at 5.8K, which is amazing. You just set a hot button and you can toggle between full frame and Super 35 and still get 6K. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's amazing. But why does this matter? Well, it means out of this lens with a 28 to 45mm range, by switching between full frame and Super 35, you can essentially get an equivalent focal range of 28 to 70mm, all with the press of a button. To show you equivalent focal ranges here, I've set the full frame Sigma 24 to 70 2.8 to 28mm, and then 70mm on 8.6K 17.9 full frame on the Venice. Whereas on the 28 to 45, you can see 28mm on 8.6K 17.9 full frame, and then on 45mm on 5.8K 17:9 Super 35. This is giving you a nearly 70mm equivalent focal length. I think the 28 to 45 looks a lot better than the 24 to 70 does across that 28 to 70mm equivalent range. The ability to shoot T2 as opposed to shooting f2.8 makes it look a little bit more special than the 24 to 70. Of course, this may not work for everyone. If you want to shoot full frame, full res on Burano or Venice, you are going to be stuck with 28 to 45mm. However, it is an interesting workaround that I use a lot in documentary and run and gun scenarios on Burano, FX2 and Venice to get more focal lengths out of a single lens. So let's talk about the quirks of this lens. And I call them quirks, not problems, because they aren't deal breakers. They are just worth being aware of if you're going to buy or use this lens. Focus ring noise is audible in both autofocus and manual focus modes. It's not loud, but it's present and will show up with a top mic on the camera. If you're just using autofocus and not moving the ring, you're not going to hear it. Iris control is laggy when you are changing iris dramatically in manual mode. How much of an issue this is really depends on the user and how fast you're pushing that. Another one to be aware of is the jump between the infinity marking and the end of the focus barrel. As with many cheaper cine lenses and mostly all photo lenses, the lens does allow you to focus past infinity. High-end cine lenses like Cooke have hard stops on infinity and do not allow you to do that. This lens doesn't, and the roll-off past infinity is quite quick and it's very dramatic. So focus pullers may want to set the infinity marking on their focus systems as a hard stop so that their focus units avoid having this quick roll-off beyond infinity. Having this room beyond infinity definitely serves a purpose. As we know, this lens is not shimmable. E-mount is not shimmable. So the lens being set up this way allows you to still hit true infinity even if the focus scale is out. It's just giving you a bit more room to fix it in case the focus scale is out. Once again, this is not an issue, it's just something to be aware of when you're setting your focus marks or when you're deciding how you want to use this lens. Overall, I'm really impressed with this lens. This feels like a really solid step into the future for lenses in general. It's nice to see a brand that's innovating and pushing the boundaries of what's actually possible. Sigma is clearly using its very strong knowledge of stills and cine applications that they have developed over the lifetime of the company. And I'm hoping to see a longer T2 zoom to partner with this lens, and maybe even a PL manual only version of this lens would be welcome as well. The future is definitely hybrid. This lens feels like the start. Thanks for watching, champions. I will see you on the next one.